Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. Really excited today to take a little virtual field trip to South Africa to see the facility at SANCCOB and to meet Tammy. So my name's Joe Grabowski. I'm the founder of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and I'm also a grade 6-7 teacher in Guelph, Ontario. Really excited to be hosting this session today. I'd like to introduce you to Tammy, and Tammy is the education manager at SANCCOB. She's a qualified high school mathematics, economics, and technology teacher, and she's been working with kids from different backgrounds for the past 5 years. She studied at Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University as well as the University of South Africa. In addition to teaching kids from all over the world, she's also helped volunteering at other animal organizations, helping to fight the causes of animal cruelty and neglect. And her current focus, obviously, is the plight of seabirds, including endangered African penguins. So Tammy's 23 years old. She's connecting to us. She lives in Cape Town, South Africa. Tammy, we couldn't be more excited to have you joining us today.
Thank you. All right, so can I have a thumbs up from everyone? Can we all hear?
All right. So Tammy, I'm going to sneak in really quickly one more time and just introduce our classes. And then we'll go from there. So we have, I guess we'll start on my end. We've got a big group here. We've got my grade 6-7. We have Mrs. Drummond and Mrs. McIntosh's grade 3s. And we've got Mrs. Jemmons' kindergarten joining us today. So a big group here in Guelph, Ontario. We also have Mr. Elsa's class from Burlington, Ontario joining us. You want to say hi? Hi! And then we also have Mrs. Golchinski's class and Miss Walburn's grade 3 from Watoma, Wisconsin. Say hi, guys. Hi. All right. Hopefully watching us, Mrs. Lamondo's class and Mrs. O'Reilly's grade 1-2 class from Toronto. They were on camera briefly before, but hopefully they're at least able to watch the YouTube feed. But those are the classes joining us. We've got well over 100 kids today, Tammy, and they're excited to learn a little bit more about SANCCOB. So I will let you take over for the next little while.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe. So, like Joe said, my name is Tammy, and I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, and I work at a group called SANCCOB. Now, SANCCOB works mostly with these little guys. Now, this is Princess on my lap. Princess is an endangered African penguin, and she's very, very beautiful. She's actually our spokes penguin because she's got this really beautiful beauty mark just above her eye on that pink sweat gland above the eye, which isn't very common for penguins. So she definitely is a princess. She's very, very spoiled, and everyone loves her lots here. But SANCCOB's main focus is working with the endangered African penguin, but we also work with lots of other seabirds. Now, SANCCOB, there's lots to what we do. Lots and lots to what we do here at the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you quickly so I can show you a video that will better explain what it is we do here than I could.
Tammy, is it possible to turn the volume up a little bit?
Great. So that was just a short video about SANCCOB and what it is that we do here at the facility, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more. So SANCCOB actually stands for the Southern African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds. And it's a bit of a funny name because it doesn't actually make the acronym SANCCOB. But if you ever want to find us, you can go to our website, www.sanccob.co.za. SANCCOB is spelled S-A-N-C-C-O-B. And if you enjoy this lesson afterwards, you want to adopt a penguin, you can go to the site as well, which helps us out a lot. But anyway, carrying on with SANCCOB. So SANCCOB is a seabird hospital and a rehabilitation center. Now, during the year, we see 2,500 to 3,500 birds at our center, and even more if there's an oil spill. Now, something that SANCCOB specializes in is working with oil spills. And that was part of us being involved in one of the largest animal rescue missions in history, actually. But what I'm going to do now is I just want to show you about a more recent oil spill that happened, because the one that I want to talk about when we actually discuss oil spills later on, it would have happened, you know, way before any of you would remember it, or before some of you were even alive. So I'm going to focus on an oil spill that happened in South Africa in 2013 so that you guys can see what that was like.
Oh.
Cool. So that was the Keanu Satu oil spill, which actually wasn't a very big spill in the whole grand scheme of things. So the oil spill that I'm going to talk about when we actually cover oil spill lessons is the treasure oil spill. Now, the one that you just watched now, there were only, about 400 birds involved in that spill. But the one that we'll discuss in the lesson, if you guys tune in for it, is the treasure oil spill, which happened in 2000. And that is actually still to date the largest animal rescue mission in history and involved 20,000 oiled birds being rehabilitated and released back into the wild. Sorry, Princess is just giving me some kisses here. I think she's excited for questions and answers later. Anyway, so looking more at SANCCOB, I just want to briefly talk about the hospital side of things and how our hospital runs. And then after that, I'm going to tell you about all the different types of penguins in the world, because that'll be interesting for us to take a look at. And finally, we'll have a look at what it is you can expect from the rest of these lessons that we have together. And then we'll go to questions and answers. So when a bird comes into SANCCOB, a 6C bird, it's actually first going to go into admissions. And every single bird will be weighed as soon as they get in, because now when I go through the different types of penguins, you'll see that they have to weigh certain amounts. Then we will fill out a card for them. So every single bird is going to get their own card and their own special number. We don't give the birds names because we've worked with about 90,000 birds, 95,000 birds since we've opened, so we can't name all of them. So they'll get a number instead. Only if the bird actually moves to SANCCOB and lives with us, like Princess here, then Princess will get a name because she'll live with us for the rest of her life. But our other birds, they get numbers instead. Then what happens after that, and it's super important, is that we'll take a little bit of blood from the bird and we'll put it on a slide and do a little smear like this. And our vet will do this for every single bird that comes into the center. So we actually have little blood slides for every bird that's come in since the early 2000s, which from a research perspective is really, really cool. And then on top of that, every single Monday, we'll make another one of these blood slides for every single bird in the hospital to track their progress and see how they're doing. Because just like when we look at human blood, when you look at a bird's blood, you can tell if they have any infections or bacteria by looking at it under a special microscope. So that's admissions. And I've actually got a little video that I can show you about the blood slides and how we go about with making them, because it's a very interesting part of what we do at SANCCOB.
Tammy, if I can just pop in for a second, can you try to turn the volume a little higher on your end? The videos are coming.
I'll try.
Yeah, the videos are coming through great. We're just having a hard time hearing the volume.
Okay, I'll try. I don't think I can put it up more than what it is. I'll go to the mixer though. Okay. All right, so that was just a look at our blood analysis process, and I don't have any more videos after this, so if some of you guys are struggling to hear the video on your side, don't worry, that was the last one. Geez, some of the kids are enjoying being on TV there. Good stuff, guys. So what we're going to do is I just want to explain what happens after admissions. So once a bird is admitted and we've weighed the bird and we've taken a little bit of its blood, then it gets its own card and its own number filled out, and after that it will move to an indoor ICU unit. So just like when people go to the hospital, if you're really, really sick, you're going to wind up going to ICU. It's the same with our birds here. There's an indoor ICU, and then once they've done well enough, we'll move them to the outdoor ICU. Then when they're good, they'll move to pen 2, then pen 3, and then we release. So we actually release birds every Thursday at the center, and we release flying birds on Tuesday, and we take them to different places. We have to take the flying birds quite far out, because if we release them too close to the center, they start to smell the fish and they just fly back. And our penguins, obviously, we take them to the sea to release them, because we can't just chuck them in a river or something like that. They have to go back to the ocean. So we'll go back to somewhere like Boulder's Beach or Stoney's Point, or we'll actually go out in a boat and we'll drop them off in the ocean. And we can do that with penguins because they've got this indoor GPS system. They're very clever birds. They're very, very clever birds. So if, for example, Princess here, she goes back to the sea, and I drop her off in Port Elizabeth, which is another city in South Africa. So if I drop her off in Port Elizabeth, but she's actually from Cape Town, then as soon as I pop her in the water, she's going to swim back to Cape Town. So she's very, very clever, and we can do that with our penguins. So that's why, luckily, it's not a problem if we drop them off in the wrong spot. And just to show you what Princess is doing here, you'll see she's kind of like nibbling at my hand. This is called preening, and preening is a sign of affection amongst penguins. So maybe if you've got a chance in your class now, you can take your hand and just go nom, 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 to someone that's sitting next to you. So if you were a penguin, that would mean that you like the person that you're sitting next to if you preen them like this. So penguins will preen each other like this if they are married or if they want to get married, or they'll preen each other like this if they're related. So it's a way that they show affection, and they clean each other's feathers. And they also preen themselves so they can keep themselves looking nice and clean. Okay, great. So for those of you who are involved in the lesson series, it's probably because you love penguins, which is why I thought I would take this opportunity to actually show you all the different types of penguins. Because here in South Africa, there are actually many people that don't even know that there is a penguin that lives in our country. Because when we think of penguins, we think mostly of, I suppose, emperor penguins. You think of these massive penguins or these cute, fluffy penguins that live in the snow. But not all penguins actually live in cold conditions like that. In fact, there's some penguins that live in New Zealand, like in forests, and there's some penguins that make nests like on old lava from volcanoes, and they're penguins that can live in very hot conditions and not just in the snow like we think. So I'm going to take this time to introduce you to every type of penguin and just tell you a little bit about each one, so you can see that not all penguins are the ones from Happy Feet. There actually are other penguins as well. And by the way, there aren't penguins of Madagascar, in case anyone was wondering. There actually isn't a penguin that lives there. So it's very true, like the story says, that they wind up breaking out of a zoo and getting to Madagascar. So if you go to Madagascar, don't expect to see penguins there. They don't live there. So I'm going to share my screen again. And bring up my slideshow so I can show you all the different types of penguins that I've got. All right. So this first one here is the Adelaide penguin. It gets to about 5.4 kilograms, and it lives in colonies in the open and uses stones to line the nest. Its favorite food is krill. Now, no penguin, in fact, no other bird in the world breeds further south than this penguin. Adelaide penguins show a number of specialized adaptations to the cold, often encountered by the species, that restricts heat loss. So they've got a very special way of keeping warm, and they use little rocks at the bottom of their nests so that melted water doesn't wind up touching the egg. And they're beautiful birds. You may recognize them from Mr. Popper's penguins. The next type of penguin is the African penguin. Now, the African penguin gets to about 3.3 kilograms, and it likes to burrow under bushes or rocks to make its nest. Their favorite food is small fish. Now, this is the only penguin breeding on the African continent, and was probably the first penguin encountered by Europeans when they came to Africa in the 1820s. Numbers have declined significantly during the 20th century, and their future has been jeopardized recently by major oil spills. African penguins breed in burrows, rock crevices, and under shrubs, often forming large colonies, with some of them numbering in thousands of pairs. Now, because of the loud braying noise that they make, these guys can also be called the jackass penguin. Now, this is just a picture to show you the different sizes of African penguin chicks. The one that's on the left-hand side is an emperor chick. So you can see that they're much, much bigger. Now, our next type of penguin is the Chinstrap Penguin, which gets to about 5 kilograms. They live in colonies in the open, and their favorite food is krill. Chinstrap penguins feed almost exclusively on krill. Other crustaceans and fish also play a minor role. This delicately colored bird is arguably the most beautiful of penguins. In contrast to other adult penguins, apart from royal penguins, this species has a white face. This is separated from the white belly by a thin, dark line running under the lower part of the chin. Therefore, the name Chinstrap Penguin. They are very, very beautiful birds, very striking, and they've got cute little pink feet. The next type is the emperor penguin, which get to 36.7 kilograms. They breed on sea ice in winter, and they carry eggs on their feet. The snow is so cold that they have to bend their feet upwards to keep the egg there, because if the egg is on the ice, even just for a few seconds, the baby chick won't hatch. Their favorite food is fish and squid. Now, the emperor penguin is the northernmost of all penguins. They breed mainly in caves or crevices. Oh, whoops. No, that's not right. Sorry. Joe, you can edit that. Sorry. So here you can see 2 emperor penguins and a chick. The next type of penguin is a Erect Crested Penguin. They get to 5.2 kilograms. They like to nest in colonies in the open, nest on rocks with little to no nesting material to line the nests. Their favorite food is krill and squid. Now, little known is actually known about this rather bizarre bird with limited breeding distribution, and they live in a very isolated part of the world. So if you've seen an Erect Crested Penguin, you can count yourself lucky, because not many people do. And here we can see an Erect Crested Penguin with a chick next to him. And all penguins are born with that fluff around their body. It doesn't matter what species they are. Next, we have the Fiordland penguin. They get to 4.1 kilograms, and they look slightly different to the Erect Crested Penguin because they have a little bit of a white coloring on their face that the Erect Crested Penguin doesn't. And there we have a picture of a blue looking like he's got quite a fright. Now, they like to live in the forests, and they normally nest under vegetation or rocks, or they can nest in caves. Their favorite food is also fish and squid. The Fiordland penguin lives in the temperate rainforests of the southwest coast of the South Island and Stewart Island in New Zealand. Our next type of penguin is the Galapagos penguin. Now, the Galapagos penguin gets to 2.1 kilograms, and they like to nest in burrow or crevices in lava, which is quite cool. Their favorite food is small fish. They are the northernmost of all penguins. Galapagos penguins breed right on the equator. which make them closest to the northern hemisphere, because no types of penguins actually breed or live in the northern hemisphere, although some have been found there before. Populations fluctuate heavily under the influence of El Niño to a degree that the future survival of the species is actually endangered. And they breed mainly in caves or crevices of old lava flows, which is really, really cool. Our next type of penguin is the Gentoo Penguin, which is my favorite out of all the penguins. They get to 5.6 kilograms. They like to nest in colonies out in the open, and their favorite food is krill and fish. This is the most northern penguin, and in many other respects, the odd one out. In contrast to the Chinstrap and Adelaide penguins, some Gentoo penguins can be found around their breeding colonies all year round, and they forage much closer inshore. So, for example, African penguins, when they go out to fish, they'll normally actually head out to sea for 2 days because they have to swim very far out to find food. But that's not the case with the Gentoo penguin. And here we have a picture of 2 Gentoo penguins with their little chicks there next to them. Our next type of penguin is the Humboldt penguin, which looks a lot like the African penguin actually. They get to 4.6 kilograms, and they like to nest in a burrow or a cave. Their favorite food is small fish. Now, these guys live close to Peru, and the Humboldt penguin breeds in a hot Mediterranean to desert climate. So these guys definitely don't live in the snow. Populations fluctuate under the influence of El Niño events as well. So you can see that they have that beautiful pink marking around their face. The pink marking is actually part of a sweat gland, and you'll see that the pink can actually become a more intense pink color based on how they're feeling, and normally it's an effect of blood rushing to the head. These guys here are king penguins, which are the second largest penguins. They get to 16 kilograms, and they like to nest in colonies out in the open. And here you can see some of these guys as well with their feet up, keeping their eggs safe. Their favorite food is fish, but they also like squid. No other bird has a longer breeding cycle than king penguins. They take 14 to 16 months to fledge a single chick. And there is a massive king penguin chick. The chicks always kind of scared me a little bit. They look really, really scary. Adults can rear a maximum of only 2 chicks every 3 years. There you go. You see how scary they get. King penguin chicks are really, really creepy. But the next type of penguin, which will make you feel a bit better, is the little penguin. Some people call this little blues, or fairy penguins. Now, they get to 1.2 kilograms, and they are known as the smallest penguin. They burrow. They can also live in caves or under bushes. And their favorite food is small fish. Obviously, very small fish, because they are very tiny themselves. They are the world's smallest penguins and look a lot like juveniles of other types of penguins. So a fully grown little penguin actually looks a tiny bit like a blue of an African penguin. And blue is what we call when the chicks lose all their fluff. Then we call them blues. Our next type of penguin is the Macaroni Penguin. Now, Macaroni penguins always look really fabulous to me. Not as fabulous as the royal penguins. You'll see royal penguins they're always striking a pose. But macaroni penguins, they get to 5.2 kilograms. You see, fabulous. Looks like a model at a photo shoot. They like to nest in colonies out in the open, and their favorite food is krill. This is probably the most abundant of all penguins in terms of their actual population. They like to breed on rocky slopes, beaches, and amongst tussocks. Most birds build a small nest from pebbles and by scraping out some mud or sand, but many pairs are content with laying their eggs on bare rock. And there we can see a macaroni penguin. with his chick. The next type of penguin is the Magellanic Penguin, which most closely resembles the African penguin. They get to 4.9 kilograms, and they burrow their nests, or they make their nests under bushes. Their favorite food is also small fish. Now, they're similar to the African penguin, but they have an extra band on their chest, which the African penguin doesn't have. But other than that, they're pretty close. And you also notice they have spots on their tummy. Now, all Magellanic and African penguins have spots on their tummy, but none of them have the same spots. It's something that makes them special. Now, these guys are different to African penguins because they breed on the opposite side of the Atlantic. Now, our next type of penguin is the Rockhopper penguin, and we actually have a Rockhopper here at SANCCOB named Rocky. She came here in 2009 on the back of a fisherman's boat, and if you guys tune into the series, you'll get a chance to meet her. Now, the Rockhopper gets to about 2.5 kilograms, and they like to nest in colonies out in the open, and sometimes they're actually in association with other species, so they might make their nests next to other types of birds that are nesting. Their favorite food is krill, fish, and squid. Now, some people actually think that the northern Rockhopper and the southern Rockhopper should be considered two different types of penguins, but there's very few difference between the northern and the southern Rockhopper, and much of what applies to the one probably holds for the other, but there's also not really enough data to say if there's that much of a difference. Oh, and here is the royal penguin, and you'll see they are all so fabulous. Now, the royal penguin gets to 5.2 Ks, and they like to nest in colonies out in the open, and their favorite food is krill. That looks exactly like a model running through the water, actually. Like I said, they always take a good picture, royal penguins. They always do. Now, in contrast to the other crested penguins, royal and macaroni penguins have orange, not yellow feather plumes. So even though it looks very yellowy, it's actually a more orange color when you compare them to other penguins that have that kind of hairstyle coming out. The other penguins will have more of a yellowish color. They originate from the supercilium that meets at the front, higher up the head than in other species. So basically that means that those feathers come closer to the top of the head. Now, this guy over here is a Snares Penguin. The Snares Penguin gets to 3.3 kilograms, and they like to nest in colonies out in the open or under forest canopy. Their favorite food is krill, squid, and fish. Now, Snares group. The Snares group of penguin actually has the most restricted distribution of all penguins. Now, what I mean by that is they live the closest together out of all the different types of penguins. So, for example, African penguins live in South Africa and Namibia, but Snares penguins actually all live pretty close together, and they're not as spread out. So here you can see quite a dense colony of Snares penguins. And the last type of penguin, the 17th type, is a yellow-eyed penguin. Now, the yellow-eyed penguin is really striking and a very beautiful bird. They get to 5.7 kilograms, and they live under dense vegetation, and their favorite food is fish and squid. The yellow-eyed penguin is often referred to as the rarest penguin in the world, although unfortunately there are others that could lay claim to that crown too, especially the Galapagos and Portland penguins, which are actually more endangered. Adults are unmistakable with their yellow eyes and yellow eye stripes that join at the back of the head. Yellow-eyed penguins have a very long chick-rearing period of 100 days. Now, to compare that, the African penguin's chick-rearing period is 40 days. Consequently, breeding takes place from September to February. So there we had a chance to look at all the different types of penguins. And if you're interested in learning more about penguins, but we're going to more specifically focus on the African penguin because that's what we deal with here at SANCCOB, then you should really join us for the rest of the lesson series. And the lessons will be much shorter in the future as well, and we'll be looking at why the African penguin population has dwindled so much and what problems affect seabirds all over the world. And you'll get a chance to meet more of our ambassador birds like Princess here, and we'll have a full lesson with Princess in the upcoming weeks. So what we're going to do now is Princess and I are going to answer any questions that you have, and Joe will take over from here.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Tammy. Those were some awesome pictures of penguins from around the world. So we are going to switch to Q&A, but before we do, I just want to talk very briefly about the lessons that are coming up. So there's 12 more lessons, and I think they'll be in the neighborhood of 20 minutes, but we're only going to have one class each time. So any classes who are watching the feed or who are joining us live, be sure to book your camera spot because we don't have a lot. So you're going to get to meet more penguins like Princess and learn about their stories, but you're also going to get to learn a little bit more about the problems that are affecting African penguins, like plastic pollution and oil spill. So 12 more lessons, and this is a great intro to start us off. So I'm going to jump between the classrooms now, and we'll start off. Let's head over to Burlington, Ontario, to Mr. Elsa's class, and I'm sure they have some questions for us.
Hi, my name is Avery. Hi, my name is Avery, and I was wondering what's the oldest penguin in the world?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that on my side.
Avery, can you step a little closer to the microphone?
What's the oldest penguin in the world?
What is the what in the world?
Oldest penguin in the world.
The oldest penguin. Oh, that's a tough question. I can't tell you the oldest penguin altogether, but I can tell you the oldest African penguin. I'll tell you two stories, okay? The first story is about a penguin that came to SANCCOB when he was 1 year old, and he came here because he was feeling a little bit sick, and then we fixed him and he went back to the wild. And then he wound up coming back to us this year, and when he came back, guess how old he was? Who wants to take a guess at how old this penguin was when he came back to us the second time?
2 billion. 100. 16. 87. 40.
Mr. Elsa's class, go ahead and take a guess.
40. 20. Guys.
Someone was close.
Okay.
Someone was close there. When this penguin came back, he was 23 years old, which for a penguin, an African penguin, is very, very old, because African penguins are only expected to live for about 10 years in the wild. So the fact that this guy came back and he was 23 was quite amazing. So the oldest penguin we've ever had at the center was 23, but the oldest African penguin in the world is 43 years old and lives in a zoo overseas.
Okay, let's grab one more from Mr. Elsa's class.
Hi, my name is Jackson, and how many penguins are in the world?
How many penguins are in the world? Millions and millions and millions, because some penguins are very endangered, like African penguins. There are only about 18,000 breeding pairs left of the African penguin. But then you also get some other types of penguins that have several million breeding pairs. So an exact number, I can't tell you, but there are millions of penguins in the world, but some of them not so many.
Okay, great questions. Let's jump over to Wisconsin and our grade 3s. I bet you they have a couple questions for us.
Stand up. Stand up and look right into here. Yep.
Hi, I'm Bailey, and I was wondering, why do the penguins have pink painted on them?
Bailey, that's a really, really good question. All right, so we used to put pink paint on the penguins' tummies, so when we released them, we could see which were birds that we'd released. Now, once a year, the penguin, they'll lose all of their feathers, and that pink spot will disappear. Now, before we did the pink spot, we used to put a little band around their flippers, but that didn't work out because maybe it would get caught with something, and then that would be a problem. And then before that, we used to put a little band around their ankle, but it was the same thing. But now we don't actually use the pink spot anymore from, I think it's the 2nd of July of this year. We've stopped using the pink spot, and that's because there's some new research that suggests that sharks are attracted to bright colors. So we don't want to put a bright pink spot on a penguin that's going to go swimming in the water. So now instead of a pink spot, we put a little chip called a transponder, which is kind of like the same thing your vet would put in your dog. So if your dog went missing, you could find him. So we do that now with our penguins instead of the pink spot. So thank you, Betty. That was a really good question.
All right, awesome question. You have another one for Tammy and Princess?
Yep, we do.
Hi, my name is Sabrina. Do penguins bite?
Do they bite or do they fight?
Bite.
Bite. Oh, my word, yes. They do. They do very much. I have been bitten nearly 10 times today. They definitely do bite. Penguins are very, very aggressive, boys and girls. If you ever see a penguin in the wild, which you guys actually wouldn't because they don't live on your side of the world, but if you ever do come across a penguin, don't put your hands near it because they'll bite you. That's also why at SANCCOB we don't allow people under the age of 18 to work with our penguins, because we've had people go in for stitches before they've been bitten so badly. So yes, they do bite.
All right, great question. And a good answer, too. Let's go to my class in Guelph. Peyton, do you have a question? You want to come up? Come on up.
What's the youngest penguin that you had to take care of?
That's a great question. So actually, you won't believe it, but every year we get in hundreds of penguin eggs, and we hatch them ourselves here at the center. So the youngest penguin we've ever worked with has been 1 second old. And we've literally raised that penguin until it's old enough to go back to the sea. And that's a big part of what SANCCOB does. We have a special room, it's called a chick rearing unit, where we hatch penguin eggs, and we rear them until they're old enough, and then we send them back to the sea.
Great question, Peyton. Let's take one from the front. You want to come on up? Introduce yourself before the question.
I'm Gabriella, and how many penguins are in Africa?
How many penguins are in Africa? Okay, so there's only one type of penguin that lives on the African continent, and that's the African penguin, which is what Princess is. And there are about 18,000 breeding pairs left of this penguin. So there's about I'd say between 40 and 50,000 altogether. But keep in mind, not all of those penguins are old enough to have baby penguins, so they can make more of them. So there aren't a lot.
Okay, we'll take one more from here, then I'll swing back and grab one more from each class to maybe start wrapping things up. Come on up, Mackenzie. Nice and loud.
How can we stop penguin extinction in South Africa?
Great question. That's a great question. All right, it's tough because a lot of the problems that the African penguin population has here will take many, many years to fix. So, for example, something like climate change. You know, the Earth is getting very, very hot, and none of the hottest recorded years have actually happened in the last 10 years. So because of this, you'll find that moms and dads are abandoning their chicks because, you know, they get confused about what time of year it is. So maybe they start molting too early, and then they can't take care of their baby, and, you know. And then another problem we have is with overfishing. And it's mostly that they have to swim very, very far out to sea to find something to eat. So by the time they get there and they've gotten some fish, they're normally fishing in the same spot where sharks and seals are fishing. And then they have to swim all the way back, and by the time they've swum back, they've worked off a lot of the fish that they've eaten. So they don't have enough food to feed themselves and feed the little ones. So eventually they wind up just leaving them. So I think if you want to look at what you can do, you can definitely make some changes in your life with regards to recycling, definitely. I mean, 1,500 plastic bottles wind up in the ocean every second. And the bulk of them actually come from countries that are in the northern hemisphere. So certainly, like, if you can recycle more and make certain decisions, like if you can use a plastic bottle or a can, rather use the can, because most cans are recycled. If you use straws, maybe don't, because not all straws can be recycled, because some of them are made out of type 2 plastic and some of them are made out of type 5 plastic. So a lot of recycling plants can't recycle straws because they don't know what type of plastic it's made out of. So little things like that, but also just awareness, just telling people, like, hey, throw your litter away, and, you know, carpool with someone, or little things like that.
Great question, Mackenzie. Let's talk to Mrs. Golchinski and Mrs. Walburn's grade 3s again. Maybe they have a wrap-up question for us.
Yep, we have one more question for you. Say your name.
Hi, my name is Landon, and I just wanted to know how penguins live in Africa.
Okay, so do you mean because it's really hot here?
Yes, that's what he means.
Okay. So it's really important to remember that not all penguins live in snow. So it's just like how you have some cats that can live in snowy conditions, and then at the same time you have cats like lions that wouldn't live in cold conditions in snow like that. It's the same for penguins. So some penguins are built to handle much colder weather, and they'll have special things in their body and special mechanisms so that they can stay warm in those types of conditions. But then at the same time, you'll have birds like Princess that are built a little bit differently, so they actually like hot weather. So Princess, living in Africa, she loves to live on the beach, and she would love to go, you know, swimming in the ocean and playing on the sand, and she likes the hot weather because that's how she's made. So there are many different types of penguins that are made to live in hot weather, and African penguins actually don't live in the hottest weather. There's some penguins that live in basically almost desert-like conditions, where it would be 10 degrees Celsius hotter there than what it is here.
Thank you.
Thank you for the awesome questions. Burlington, Ontario, Mr. Else.
Hi, my name is Emma, and I was wondering what the biggest penguin is.
Can you lean a little closer to the microphone?
My name is Emma, and I was wondering what the biggest penguin is.
The biggest penguin.
Biggest penguin. The biggest penguin is definitely the emperor penguin. So Princess here, you can see she's not too big, and she'll weigh about 4 kilograms. Well, no, actually I'm lying. She's lighter than that. She'll weigh about 3 kilograms, right? But now the emperor penguin weighs 36.7 kilograms. So will literally weigh more than 10 times than her. So emperor penguins, I think they get to about 1.1 meters, and I'm sorry that I'm not converting this to like feet, or I'm not sure if you guys are in Canada or in the States, but they get to about 1.1 meters, and they'll weigh 36.7 kg. So they are huge birds. They're really, really big.
Okay, great question. Well, we're getting right up to the hour mark. I think we learned a lot about penguins today, and Princess was so well behaved, just gently nibbling you. She must like you a lot, by the way she was doing all that preening. So, Tammy, thanks so much. That was a great introduction to our celebration of African penguins. So, there's 12 more lessons coming up, and you can check out the rest of the schedule on exploringbytheseat.com. And yeah, Tammy, I'll get you to stick around for a moment afterwards, just to maybe talk to the class on this side for a second. But thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait for our next lesson on Wednesday, where I think we're going to get to meet Stubby and hear Stubby's story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I'm going to turn the microphones on one more time so the classes can say thank you and goodbye, and then we'll log off. We'll sign off for today.